Hi, Mug. How you doing, baby boy? Got another book for you. It's called Joseph and the Colorful Coat. Okay? Nana misses you. Nana loves you. Is it time for bed? Okay, here we go. Joseph and the Colorful Coat. It's purple. Purple. We like purple. Jacob was an old shepherd with 12 sons. The youngest sons were Joseph and Benjamin. Jacob loved Joseph more than all of his other sons. When Joseph was 17 years old, his father gave him a special gift, a very colorful coat. Joseph had strange dreams and told his brothers about them. In his dreams, Joseph saw all his brothers bowing down before him. When they heard this, his older brothers got angry and said, "So you think you're better than us? You think you will rule over us?" Joseph's older brothers hated him. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his older brothers, who were watching the family goats and sheep in the countryside. "Here comes the little dreamer," said his brothers when they saw Joseph approaching, and they quickly made a plan to get rid of him for good. As soon as Joseph arrived, his brothers grabbed him, tore off his colorful coat, and tossed him into the well that was so deep he couldn't climb out. "Let's see what becomes of his dreams now," they said. Shortly afterwards, the brothers saw some traveling merchants approaching, and they said, "Let's not leave our brother to die. Let's sell him instead." So they pulled Joseph up out of the well and sold him as a slave to the traveling merchants. On their way back home, the brothers took Joseph's colorful coat and smeared it with blood from the goat. When they showed it to Jacob, he was deeply heartbroken and said, my poor son Joseph, a wild animal must have eaten him." Meanwhile, the traveling merchant took Joseph all the way to the land of Egypt. There they sold him to a rich Egyptian named, I can't say his name, and Joseph became one of his household slaves. During his years as a slave, Joseph was successful at every task he performed. His owner noticed that Joseph must be blessed by God, so he promoted him to be his personal assistant. Eventually, he put Joseph in charge of the entire household. Potiphar's wife had noticed that Joseph was very handsome. She would often try to kiss Joseph, but Joseph always turned away. This made her very angry. And one day, when Joseph refused to kiss her, she screamed so loud that her husband came running. When Potiphar arrived, his wife lied to him about Joseph, saying that Joseph had tried to kiss her. Potiphar believed his wife, and he became so angry at Joseph that he had Joseph arrested and thrown into prison. God still watched over Joseph in prison. When Joseph's fellow prisoners had strange dreams, they would tell him their dreams. And with God's help, Joseph always explained exactly what the dream meant and what it said about the future, and he was always right. One night, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, had a troubling dream. He very badly wanted to know its meaning. So the next day he gathered all the magicians and the wise men in Egypt to his place and described this troubling dream to them. But none of the magicians and wise men could understand Pharaoh's dream or tell him what it meant. Then one of the Pharaoh's servants spoke up and said, "I once met a man in prison named Joseph who can explain the meaning of any dream." So Pharaoh had Joseph taken out of prison and brought before him. "I am told you have the power to explain the meaning of any dream." Pharaoh said, "It is not my power, but God's," replied Joseph. "Tell me your dream." Pharaoh told Joseph that in his dream there were 7 fat, healthy cows that came up out of the river. They were then followed by 7 sickly cows. The skinny cows ate up all the fat cows, and that's when Pharaoh woke up, confused and troubled. Do you see the cows, Mug? Funky cows. Itch, sorry. "This is what your dream means," said Joseph. "Egypt will have 7 good years of plentiful food, followed by 7 years of terrible famine, when no food will grow. If Pharaoh is wise, he will put someone in charge who will store the extra food from the plentiful years, so there is still food to eat from the years of famine." "Since God had given you such wisdom, there can be no one better suited for the job than you," said Pharaoh to Joseph. "You shall serve as governor over all my lands. I put my entire kingdom in your power, and my people shall obey your commands." As Joseph predicted, Egypt then had 7 years of plenty, during which more grain was grown than all the Egyptians could eat. As governor, Joseph made sure all the extra food was safely locked away in Pharaoh's great storehouses. Then the years of terrible famine arrived, and no food was able to grow anywhere. The only food around was in Egypt, thanks to Joseph's careful planning. Starving people from all the surrounding lands traveled to Egypt to buy food from Joseph. In Joseph's homeland of Israel, the famine was really bad, and the elderly Jacob said to his 11 remaining sons, "Why are you all just standing around here while we starve? Travel to Egypt where they have food and bring some back home," because he was starving. So the brothers set out, and when they reached Egypt, they bowed down before the governor and humbly asked for food. They did not recognize that the governor was their own brother, Joseph. But Joseph, he recognized his brothers. Joseph wondered if his brother had changed their ways. After all these years, he decided to test them. He had their sacks filled with grain, but he also hid some money in their sacks. And in his younger brother Benjamin's sack, he hid his own silver drinking cup. Joseph sent them on their way home, but soon afterward, he chased them down as they were leaving the city. "Why have you stolen from me after I was kind and gave you food?" shouted Joseph. He had their sacks opened and revealed the money and the silver cup. The brothers were shocked and confused. They said to themselves, "What God must now be punishing them for the awful thing they did to their brother so many years ago?" "Because your youngest brother stole my cup," said Joseph, "I will keep him as my slave." And this the oldest brother begged Joseph to take him as a slave instead of Benjamin. He told Joseph that their father had already lost one of his sons, and to now lose the youngest son would break his heart forever. Joseph now saw that his brothers had indeed changed their ways, and he could pretend no longer. "Look closely," he said. "Don't you recognize me? I am your brother Joseph," he told them. "Now go, return to our father and bring him and all of our family here to Egypt." Jacob was amazed and overjoyed to learn that his son Joseph was still alive. He took his entire family and traveled down to Egypt. When they finally met again after so many years, Joseph and Jacob hugged and wept tears of joy. Pharaoh was grateful to Joseph and gave Joseph's family the best land in Egypt for their new home. Joseph was not angry with his brothers for what they did to him when he was so young, because he knew it had all been a part of God's plan. And that was the end. Mug, I love you. I miss you. Good night, sweet prince.